the problem is they hire the wrong people. They hire based on fit, past experience doing exactly what they want that person to do. And that's not where you get innovation. Right. Innovation comes from connecting different dots and connecting dots differently.
Welcome to Women We Should Know with international speaker, mindset reset mentor, author, and your host, Leslie Michaels. With audacious honesty and candor, the Women We Should Know podcast presents the wisdom and life-empowering insights of women who are the embodiments of innovation and social evolution. Please join Leslie as she shares potent conversations that will inspire your personal and professional evolutions.
Welcome back to Women We Should Know. As always, it is my big thrill of the day, of the week, of whatever it is, when I get to come and do a show, sit down and speak with a wildly audacious woman who is coloring outside of the lines, who never gets in boxes that were built by other people, and who is out there in the world using her voice to make positive changes for all of us, and particularly when they're out there making positive changes for women. This is what I live and breathe for, is bringing these conversations to you. And of course, I don't mind that I get to be the one having the conversations. Aren't I the lucky one? Today, we have an amazing woman for you. Joan Michelson, MBA, is host of the acclaimed podcast, Electric Ladies. Be sure and check that out, women. You might know it as formerly being Green Connections Radio. Now it's Electric Ladies. You know where to catch up with her again. She interviews remarkable women leaders and innovators in energy, climate, and sustainability across all industries, from batteries to fashion, including about careers. She is a journalist who writes for Forbes and selected other media on these issues. She is a coach and frequently a public speaker. She has previously spent many years as a communications and marketing leader with Fortune 100 companies, including, you might have heard of these, little companies, Chrysler, American Express. We are thrilled that she is with us here today, and she is going to have so much to share with you that's just going to fill your pockets with nuggets to carry forward and pull out later. So without further ado, hi, Joan.
Hi, Leslie. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, absolutely. I am delighted and honored to have you with us today. I have this one little Leslie tradition at the beginning of every episode. I love to ask our guests, what's one thing about you that's not in your bio that you would be willing to reveal to our listeners?
I was a dancer years ago, and my girlfriend and I were the only white chicks in the Chuck Davis African Dance Company.
Wow. Oh my gosh. The woman
that you didn't expect that one.
Real. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Whoops, thanks for sharing that. I'll be going to see if I can find something in the archives. Check you out.
No, I don't think so.
Just before we came on today, you and I were chatting it up, and we ended up on the topic of outliers. You were sharing how businesses respond, and then, of course, moving into specific outliers. Can you elaborate on that? What you know about the outliers?
Well, I know about them because I am one, and you are too. I would pose it, and it's really kind of what you framed as you introduced the show of women who color outside the lines and don't fit into boxes. One of the things that goes on in corporate America is 72% of CEOs say that innovation is one of their top 3 priorities. And close to 70% of them say they have a hard time driving innovation in their organization. And I would pose it, having been in there and been an entrepreneur myself, that the problem is they hire the wrong people. They hire for what I call mediocrity. They hire based on fit, and they hire based on past experience doing exactly what they want that person to do. And that's not where you get innovation. Right. Innovation comes from connecting different dots and connecting dots differently. So when I was at Chrysler, for example, when they recruited me to head up communications and co-head the sales and marketing of the electric car division, I didn't own a car at the time. I'd never worked in the car business. The word automotive wasn't anywhere in any of my material. I happened to be talking to somebody at a lunch who turned out to be the president of the company, of the division. I had no idea. And the next morning he called me and said, "Are you happy?" and started recruiting me. And we did hockey stick growth. And the reason we did, he has told me, was because I didn't come in saddled with the way we always do it in the car business, right? Mm-hmm. So I came in with all kinds of crazy ideas and connected different things and created partnerships by connecting different dots and connecting dots differently and doing different kinds of campaigns that reached different audiences that they hadn't reached before, because they were outside the box, right? And and my boss would look at me and he'd go, how did this go? And I go, "It's okay, Rick, it's all right.
I got this."
Right, exactly. You don't need to know how the sausage is made, but it worked, right? Because he would go, "How did this crazy idea that you came into my office with end up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal or, on the going viral?" And so and these are the women that I interview, and these are probably the women that you interview.
Right.
Are women in particular, who are coming from a different background and bringing a different take to solve a problem. And you and I mean, obviously there are a lot of men that do this too. And one of them, frankly, right now is President Zelensky of Ukraine. Absolutely. I mean, everybody frames him as an actor who, a comedian who's now become this Churchillian figure. And that's absolutely true. What they also don't say, by the way, is that he did go to law school, and he did have that kind of background. But the reason that he's been, one of the many reasons I would pose it, that he's been so successful and is obviously he's an outlier in this role, is because he wasn't coming in with the way things are always done. Oh, this is how you talk to Russia. Oh, this is how you do diplomacy. And he just says it like it is. Right. I mean, his talk in front of Congress yesterday, I don't know when this will air, but the March 16th, was masterful in its authenticity. Right. He didn't come in and pontificate. He just spoke from the heart. Yes. And he shared a gut-wrenching video of before and after. And you could hear, I mean, reporters said you could more than hear a pin drop, that you couldn't, somebody said you couldn't hear anybody breathe. And those are the kinds of people that bring the magic. Right. And so I've done stories, and I do some consulting on this too, around hire the outliers. The people who you're in a meeting and you say, "Oh, well, they'll never fit." You meet somebody in an interview. "Oh, well, they'll never fit in." Hire them. "Oh, they're going to rub so-and-so the wrong way." Hire them. That's what you need. You need a spark. You need the catalyst. You need somebody to go, "Hey, let's flip it over and turn it purple and make it polka dot." Right. Exactly. That is brilliant. Hire the outliers. Have you written that book yet? I did. I wrote the story. I'm actually working on a book about it. Yes, I'm sure you wrote the story, but I wanted to buy the book. Yes, the book is in process. Okay, good. Well, I know you work a lot with women, and you talk a lot about women and opportunities for women in the ECG space. ESG, yeah. Okay, it's time for me to have a break. ESG space, yes. Can you speak to our listeners about that? Yes. So ESG, for the uninitiated, is environment, social, and governance, and might be a new term. They might know it better as climate, sustainability, and energy. But what they also there are other components that those really fit into the bucket of the E. The S is us. The S is how you treat all of the different stakeholders in your organization, employees, customers, suppliers, vendors, investors, the media, the community that you work and live in, et cetera. So and any of the nonprofits or partners that you work with. And then and your diversity. And then the board, the G is accountability. It's called governance. And it's really about accountability, transparency, diversity on your board, the reporting, the ESG reporting. Next week, the SEC is coming out with their first tranche of reporting standards that are going to be required in audited financial statements. This is a big thing. Yes, there's a whole bunch of standards now that companies have to do reporting, and the SEC is now making them required in audited financial statements, which is a huge sea change. Yeah. And in fact, I just did a story in Forbes recently on how ESG is now, in the face of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, shown itself to be a geopolitical strategy, because there are all these companies going off of fossil fuels faster in order to get off of the need for Russian fuel. And there you have the S part, of course, taking care of the humanitarian aspect of this horribleness. And then the G part is who are you holding accountable? The sanctions, right? And then also the companies that are still doing business in Russia are being held to account. I did a story today on the Yale School of Management created a list of 400 companies and counting, I imagine, and where they stand on doing business with Russia in light of the Ukraine war. And it's very telling, because you've got company like Amazon hasn't budged out of Russia. And yet Deloitte is completely, my former employer, is completely divesting themselves of, they're shutting down everything. McDonald's was positioned in the media as shutting down operations there, but they're not. They're only pausing them. They're only suspending for now. They're not shutting them down completely. So,
and that's an important point that I've noticed coming up in the media lately. Someone will say, "Oh, Leslie, did you hear so-and-so?" And when I go and look at, no, they just paused. That's not the same thing.
Yes, it is. It's a big difference. And the other thing that I want to stress, so there's a lot of things around this. First of all, it started as a niche investment strategy like 30 years ago. And it was, people say, "Oh, that's nice, but you're not going to get the financial performance." Well, you do. And in fact, in COVID, you had companies that had higher ESG ratings who performed better, because the profile of companies in ESG means they do longer term planning. They look out for risks coming down the pike. They treat their people better. They have more systems in place. So it's very interesting. And they have a different kind of supply chain management. It's very interesting. So what I also want to point out, though, on this is, for anybody who is looking to have a job with purpose, or is looking to do business in an industry where they feel aligned with their values, that the ESG space, the climate space, the energy, the sustainability space, the clean energy space, those are places where there's an enormous amount of opportunity. I mean, these companies are growing like gangbusters. I was just talking to a company that's building a whole new ESG team, and they're a national company. And so a lot of companies are building their ESG teams. They're building out their clean energy portfolios, especially with the billions that have come down from the government to expedite this. But even before the government funding, private sector has been doing this because the marketplace is demanding it. So there's a lot of opportunity. If you're a small business and you want to get a contract in this space, if you're somebody who's looking for a new job, there's opportunities in this space. If you're doing your job now and you want to have more purpose in your job, I have a lot of people coming to me for career coaching saying, "Oh, well, I'm not happy. I don't feel aligned with my job from a values perspective." I help them figure out how they can add that to their job portfolio now, like a project they can do, or a group they can join, or a form. Yeah, so there's different ways to go about it, but there's a lot of economic opportunity in the ESG space.
I know I've read several articles about one of the big encouragements for women-owned businesses, women who are founding businesses or they have young businesses, because of the fact that women receive such a minimal percentage of venture capital.
2%.
At 2% as opposed to men.
Yeah.
That
excuse me, but last year it was a record of 8%, and then it went back down to 2%.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Securing these government contracts is a great way for women to support their businesses, because so many of these government contracts, based on what their point of focus is, receive additional incentives if they can place their monies with women-owned or minority-owned or marginalized communities. So this is something huge for women to look into.
Yes, and there are also government grants like the SBIR grants and other grants that they give preferential status to women-owned and minority-owned businesses. Mm-hmm. I just misspoke. I apologize. It's 2.3% for venture capital, and we are now up to 8% of female CEOs in the Fortune 500. That was my mistake. So I just want to put that on the record. I am a journalist, so I keep things on the record and accurate. So there are opportunities, and there are also opportunities where to partner with big companies who want to get preferential treatment in a contract where they're the prime and you can be the subcontractor, because if they say they're partnering with a woman-owned business on the project, they'll get extra brownie points, so to speak.
That's great to know for all of our women listeners out there. What would you say for women? Because between being a journalist and being a big, heavy-hitting outlier in the business world, what would you say is, or are, I started to say one, but let's do three. The three top points of direction where women should be looking now in terms of expanding their equity, expanding their viability in the marketplace.
When you say equity, do you mean building their businesses, or do you mean for a job, or what?
Their professional equity in terms of, we need to be sure that we put her on the short list.
So it depends on what their goals are, of course, but you need to know how to deal with the media, and so there's brand building, there's communication skills, and there's understanding where your strengths are functionally. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times what happens nowadays with women's mentoring and empowerment stuff is they all talk about, you have to have confidence and walk in the room with them, which is great, and it's true. Mm-hmm. But you have to be good at something.
Exactly.
Okay, you have to have foundational skills that make you add value to an organization. Mm-hmm. So you can't take that for granted. And one of the secret sauces is to understand the strategy of, no matter what position you're in, I don't care if you're the receptionist, to understand the strategy of that business. So for example, if you're, just off the top of my head, if you're looking at accounting firms, management consulting firms, understand that they make their money off of two things. One is billable hours, right? Time.
Right.
And the other is tools like tests and screenings and technological tools that they can use, software, et cetera.
Right.
It's systems, right? So they're what's called VAR. They're resellers, in effect, mm-hmm. strategic partners. Mm-hmm. And so and whatever your skill set is, you can find a place in this ESG paradigm, because every business needs everything. They need HR, they need finance, they need technology. Right. You don't have to be an engineer, a physicist, or a technologist in order to do it. And so I would say, especially if you want to transition into doing something else, it's really important to get your brand out there. And the best way to do that is to write things for free on LinkedIn or Medium or one of the other platforms, and get your voice out there and demonstrate what you know. Put your spin on a situation. And I'm not talking about a 6-second TikTok video. I mean, my one of the people on my team has got me on TikTok now. She takes video excerpts from my interviews and puts them out there. I'm like, okay, fine, have fun. But I'm talking about intellectual capital. Okay. Right. So you have to show how what you do now translates into what you want to do. Right. And demonstrate your expertise and your position on things, and then send it through social media, send it to people who, if you're applying for a job at a law firm or a consulting from wherever, or Walmart, I don't care where it is, send it to the people that are there and tag that company. I mean, whether it's at Walmart or at Deloitte or whatever, and then but tag specific people so that it goes into their feeds and then they see it. But you have to, self-awareness is really critical. And it's knowing what your strengths are functionally, but it's also knowing what your values are and knowing where you are now. And I just want to pull one other thing on that. We evolve as humans. Okay. I have so many people come to me and say, well, I don't know. I want to do something else, but I don't know what yet. And I can't do anything until I know. I'm like, you're going to change direction like 4 times in your career, maybe 8, maybe 12. So, I mean, I've lived in 8 or 9 states, depending upon how long you count lived in. Right. So I've worked in different industries. So when you have a functional skill, you can be in different industries, and you will grow, you will evolve, you will reach a point where it's like, okay, so been there, done that. I want to do something else now. That's okay. Be in tune with that and understand that. And as one of my guests said on my show, don't just go for a dream that you've always had, because you might have outgrown that dream now. You might be ready for something bigger, better, different. That might not be where your genius is anymore. Exactly. Because you might have outgrown it. So let yourself evolve, build your brand, and learn how to communicate, including with the media. And listen to yourself. Okay, people are going to hate me when I say this, but listen to any recordings that record yourself in any kind of a conversation. Right. And if you have verbal tics, like every other word is, or every other word is like, or every other word is, or you can't get out a sentence, fix it. It matters. Absolutely matters. Absolutely. You mentioned your show. What inspired you to start your show? Well, I'm a professional communicator, and I always have been. And I produced TV in the past. I did work at 60 Minutes and Primetime Live and other shows. And so I've always been a broadcast journalist. Though I've gone back and forth between what I call corporate journalism and marketing and traditional journalism. And when I left Chrysler, when I got to Chrysler, I fell in love with the energy sustainability space. And I met all these cool people. And then I've always been advocating for women as a avocation, if you will. Even when I was at American Express and Deloitte, I would do workshops on women and money and things like that. And then when I left Chrysler and I came back to DC, I was speaking at different things, and someone came up to me at a conference and said, I'd love you to do a show on our network. And I decided that I really wanted to emphasize women experts, because I'm fed up with women not getting the microphone. I mean, there have been studies that show that even on issues related to women, more men are interviewed as the expert. It is absolutely true. Absolutely. And a lot of times the media company has a cute young female as the moderator, and with all the experts are white men. And I'm like, stop. Just I know. Get a grip. And the other thing I want to say, just to this point, since I use the word cute young female, is it's not about age. You can reinvent yourself at any time. I don't do age. Just be. Don't categorize yourself by your age. Just Absolutely. Do and be.
women are stepping out and claiming the right to do that more and more. And I speak with a lot of them on my show. I'm sure you speak a lot of them on your show. And it's just time to step out from behind all the minimizations that
Well,
we're
and in
gifted.
fact, that's true. And there's data points on this because
Yes.
women tend to be elevated to senior level roles between 5 and 10 years later than men.
Yes.
And it's not just because women stop to have babies. I don't happen to have children. I love children. I just don't happen to have them. It's because women make career decisions differently.
That's right.
And we also have different opportunities.
Mhm.
And we have to prove ourselves longer, which don't get me started on that one. We'll be here for 7 years. Don't limit yourself too, right? Don't buy into that programming. Just
Right.
go for it.
Right. And then there are so many studies and the data points to substantiate that women have a tendency to not go for something until they feel like they know 90% of the material or 90% of the skill, where men will go for it, audaciously go for it at somewhere between 57 and 60% of the skill set necessary. So
Yeah, that fries me to no end. Yeah.
I know. So we have to start, women, we have to start stepping out sooner, stepping out more boldly.
Yeah, and they do that. They cancel, I call it self-cancel. They self-cancel around business contracts up too. They say, oh, I'm not going to apply for that grant because they're not going to choose me anyway. Or I'm not going to apply for that award because they're not going to choose me anyway. Or they're not going to blah, 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 blah.
Yes. I have a very good friend in New York who's been one of the senior headhunters for top positions in companies in and around New York. And she cannot, very often, it frustrates her to no end, she cannot beg women enough to get them to put down a larger salary requirement, even when she informs them that the company they are discussing is eager to balance the male-female representation in the C-suite. And the woman still says, no, 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 no.
Tell her to call me. I have binders of women.
Okay, I'll do that. Being a journalist, I have to ask you,
Sure.
because there's so much noise about journalism these days.
Mhm.
How do you see personally the state of journalism in this country?
I'm actually inspired by a lot of the new entities that have cropped up and are cropping up.
Mhm.
The hard part is that anybody can call themselves a journalist.
Mhm.
And so I find myself qualifying with my depth of expertise.
Mhm.
And I think there's a real need for fact-based news. The problem is not so much with journalism, it's frankly with the consumer, because people have to not just want to listen to media that confirms their opinions already. It's called confirmation bias.
Right.
But they have to want to hear positions that they don't agree with and get information they don't agree with. And the biggest problem right now is that the reason that certain media entities are successful is because they're parroting garbage and people are buying it, and then it's actually hurting democracy. I mean, democracy is based on people having information with which to make independent decisions.
Correct.
And if they're not getting good information, I mean, and COVID is a good example. The any election is an example. And I don't want to alienate any of your listeners, but there is such a thing as truth and facts.
There is.
And COVID is dangerous. Vaccines do work. Joe Biden is president of the United States. I mean, there's certain things that are just plain old factually correct.
He's not a robot.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so I think that consumers have to consume news from sources that verify them. I hate it when people say to me, oh, the media did this and the media did that. And I'm like, okay, so explain this to me. Do you think all the news directors and all the managing editors got together in one big room and said, what are we going to do about this? No, they don't even know each other a lot of the time. So
which is a really wonderful point for you to make. They don't even know each other in many cases.
So I think it's really there are a lot, and there's some new platforms coming out, and there's independent platforms that are new. And I also think that podcasting, I mean, I do real journalism on my show. I actually had I had a network tell me, this was a few years ago, and it's pretty comical, that they couldn't take my show in their network because I am pro environment, and they saw that as a political position. And I am pro women, and they saw that as a political position. And I said, if you see those as political positions and not just values, I don't want to be in your network.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's really up to us, and it's up to the readers, the listeners, the viewers to support financially, pay for your digital subscription, and watch reporters who fact check and who provide context and data points that are verifiable in external sources.
And then follow through with your own comparative analysis. Be willing to hear the things that you don't want to agree with.
Exactly.
You might surprise yourself.
Yeah. I mean, in every,
be willing.
That's right. In every story that I do, I put in links to the points that I'm making and the numbers I put in there. And you can look at it for yourself.
Exactly. And that's what we have gotten too far away from, in my not so humble opinion.
Well, and I also think, frankly, in some defense of the consumer, people are overwhelmed with their lives, and they probably like the idea of somebody making decisions for them in some area or another, because they've got too much to juggle. And I know I've got a lot to juggle too. But you're responsible for your own vote. You're responsible for your own health. You're responsible for your own finances. And don't just take somebody else's point of view. Go to verifiable sources that are independently verified.
I understand being overwhelmed, but these are crucial. These are crucial.
Matter of life and death, literally.
To our lives, to the life of our nation, to the life of our neighbors. And so maybe forego that extra movie and spend that 2 hours laying in bed going through some research. Again, just my not so humble opinion, but what the heck? I can have one. As we get ready to wrap up here, Joan, you have been amazingly informative. I'm so grateful. What is the one thing you haven't gotten to say that you would really like to say to our listeners?
Well, I'd love people to listen to my podcast, Electric Ladies Podcast, and tell me what they think, and share it, and let me know who they might want to hear on the show. And we do have an opportunity for, and I do coaching. So if you're looking to change careers or to get more into alignment with your values through your career, please reach out to me, electricladiespodcast.com, or on Twitter at Joan Michelson, and let me know, what your situation is. And you never know, it might make sense to work together. But I really want people to be inspired. I've interviewed like 350 women, and they're all across the economy, from, like you said, batteries to fashion, electric vehicles to cosmetics, energy systems, ESG, investing, blah, blah, blah. I mean, policy, all over the place. And they can find it all on electricladiespodcast.com or on your favorite podcast app, like where they're listening to this show now as well. Because these are all amazing women that everybody should know.
Everybody should know. And don't worry, women, I will do for you what I always do for you. I love doing this for you. All of Joan's information will be in her program notes. So you will find her URL, you will find her, whatever she wants to give us, to give to you. That's where you'll find it, in the program notes. And you know where to go to find that. And when you do, be sure, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and give Joan a big thumbs up when you go and visit the program notes.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joan. I really appreciate you being on today. As we close out today, I am confident, women, that, as I said in the beginning, I knew you would. You've got some nuggets. You're going to carry them in your pocket and look at them later. And be sure and do that. There's something in there that has the potential to change your perspective, change your idea, maybe even change your life. So take a look at that. Give yourself the opportunity. And thank you again for joining us. I just want to remind you as we close out today, you truly are stronger and wiser than you acknowledge.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you received inspiration for expanding your own social innovation and influence. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at lesliemichaels.com/podcast. For more tips, insights, and support in creating a fully audacious, professional, and personal lifestyle you love, visit our Women We Should Know community on Facebook.